My name is Andrew, 29 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had my life together. Working as an accountant with a clean credit score, I was proud of my financial independence. Then came a strange envelope about missed mortgage payments for a loan I never took. Turns out, my parents had secretly put a $463,000 mortgage in my name to save my younger sister from foreclosure. Their justification: your sister deserved this house, you should be honored to help. Before I tell you how my own parents betrayed me, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if family financial drama keeps you on the edge of your seat. I grew up in a modest 2-story home in suburban Chicago, the kind of neighborhood where everyone mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings, and kids rode bikes until streetlights came on. My parents, Harold and Martha, were high school sweethearts who married young and had me when they were in their mid-20s. Dad worked as a sales manager at an office supply company, and Mom was an elementary school administrator. We were solidly middle class, comfortable, but not wealthy. From my earliest memories, I can recall a pattern that would define my childhood. My sister Cassandra was the family star. 2 years younger than me, she had this natural charisma that seemed to captivate everyone, especially our parents. Where I was practical and studious, Cassandra was artistic and expressive. She could walk into a room and instantly become its center, something my more reserved personality never managed. Cassie has such a special gift, Mom would say, whenever my sister performed in the living room, dancing or singing with dramatic flair. Meanwhile, my straight-A report cards were met with quick nods and comments like, "That is what we expect from you, Andrew." The pattern of favoritism was subtle at first, but became more obvious as we grew older. When I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math, Dad suggested I save up my allowance. 3 months later, they spent $800 on private dance lessons for Cassandra without hesitation. When I joined the debate team and qualified for a national competition, my parents cited budget concerns about the travel costs. 6 months later, they took out a loan to send Cassandra to a prestigious summer arts program in New York. I do not want to sound bitter. I loved my sister despite everything. Cassandra had a warmth to her that was genuine, and she never deliberately flaunted her favored status. As kids, we were even close at times, building elaborate blanket forts and making up stories together. But as we entered our teens, the gap between us widened with each parental decision that reinforced her special status. By 16, I had started working part-time at a local grocery store, stocking shelves after school and on weekends. Not because we needed the money, but because I had realized something important: financial independence would be my ticket to respect. While my parents funded Cassandra's increasingly expensive artistic pursuits, private voice lessons, dance competitions, portfolio photography sessions, I saved nearly every dollar I earned. My senior year of high school was a turning point. Despite maintaining a 3.9 GPA while working 20 hours weekly, my college fund contained just enough for 2 semesters at a state school. Meanwhile, my parents had been setting aside money for Cassandra's education at an exclusive arts college since she was 10. "We know you will figure it out, Andrew. You are so good with money," Dad told me when I questioned the disparity. "Cassandra's talents need nurturing in the right environment. Her future depends on connections and opportunities." The message was clear: my sister's dreams merited investment. Mine required self-sufficiency. I did figure it out. Through a combination of scholarships, part-time jobs, and careful budgeting, I paid my way through a solid state university with a degree in accounting. I graduated with minimal student loans, something I was genuinely proud of. Cassandra attended a private arts college in California, fully funded by our parents, who remortgaged their house to cover the steep tuition. After college, I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and began building my career at a mid-sized accounting firm. Every step forward was calculated and earned through discipline. By 27, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest condo in a developing neighborhood. My credit score was nearly perfect, something that, as an accountant, I took particular pride in. Meanwhile, Cassandra's post-college life took a different trajectory. Her acting career consisted mainly of unpaid experimental theater and occasional commercial auditions. Our parents subsidized her apartment in a trendy neighborhood and covered her car payments. When she called home frustrated about rejection, they would send care packages that often included cash. I maintained a cordial but distant relationship with my family during these years. I would visit for major holidays, call on birthdays, and occasionally meet my parents for dinner when they came to the city. These interactions were pleasant enough on the surface, but I always left feeling like an outsider looking in on a club where Cassandra remained the cherished member. Things shifted when Cassandra met James, a charming real estate developer with a flashy car and expensive taste. After a whirlwind 6-month romance, they married in an extravagant ceremony that my parents drained their savings to fund. James seemed successful on the surface: designer suits, luxury watches, and confident talk about his big deals. But something about him set off my accountant's internal alarm. Within a year of their marriage, Cassandra and James purchased a sprawling 5-bedroom house in an exclusive suburb, complete with a pool and home theater. When I visited for their housewarming, I quietly calculated the mortgage they would need based on the neighborhood and property size. The numbers did not add up with what I knew about their income. James has amazing business instincts. My sister gushed when I cautiously asked how they afforded such a place. "We are investing in our future. You should take more risks, Andrew. Not everything has to be calculated to death." My parents beamed with pride during that housewarming party, Dad repeatedly mentioning to other guests that this was exactly the life we always wanted for our Cassie. Mom took me aside at one point, squeezing my arm and saying, "Isn't it wonderful? This is why we always gave her that extra support." In the months that followed, I noticed subtle signs of trouble. My parents mentioned helping out the kids a bit more frequently. During one family dinner, Dad asked seemingly casual questions about my retirement accounts and investment strategies. Mom commented that family needs to stick together through financial ups and downs. I nodded politely, but kept my financial details vague, a habit formed through years of self-reliance. What I did not realize then was that these were not innocent conversations. They were reconnaissance missions, gathering intelligence for a betrayal I could never have imagined from my own family. The first sign that something was wrong came on an ordinary Tuesday in April. Among the usual stack of mail was an envelope from a mortgage company I did not recognize. Assuming it was just another credit card offer, I almost tossed it aside. Something made me open it. "Second notice, payment past due," read the heading in bold red letters. The letter referenced a mortgage account number I did not recognize and mentioned a property address in Oak Brook Estates, an upscale suburb about 30 miles from my condo. The outstanding amount was $8,200, representing 2 missed monthly payments plus late fees. My first thought was identity theft. As an accountant, I had seen clients deal with various financial scams, and I knew the proper steps to take. I called the mortgage company, listed on the letter, prepared to report fraudulent activity. "Yes, Mr. Carter, we show you as the primary borrower on this mortgage, originated 6 months ago," the customer service representative confirmed after verifying my social security number. "The loan is for $463,000 for the property at 27 Willow Lane. This is now the second missed payment, and if we do not receive funds within 15 days, we will need to begin formal delinquency proceedings." My heart began racing. I asked for details about the application and was told it had been processed through their online portal with electronic signature verification. The down payment of $80,000 had been made by wire transfer from an account not linked to me. That evening, I received an automated alert from a credit monitoring service I subscribed to: "Significant change detected in your credit score." When I logged in, I saw my nearly perfect 820 score had plummeted to 640. The report showed a major new debt and 2 missed payments. Sleep evaded me that night. First thing the next morning, I called all 3 major credit bureaus to place fraud alerts on my reports and requested detailed information about the mortgage. What they sent over the next few days turned my confusion into cold, clarifying rage. The mortgage documents included a scanned copy of my driver's license tax returns from the previous 2 years and a signature that mimicked mine but was clearly forged. The property address matched the house my sister and brother-in-law had purchased 6 months earlier. The application listed my income accurately, but inflated my assets significantly. Most damning of all, the contact email provided to the mortgage company was a slight variation of my actual email, andrewcarter83@gmail. Instead of my actual andrewcarter83@gmail, an address I later confirmed had been created specifically for this transaction. The phone number listed was my parents' landline. As I spread these documents across my dining table, a sickening realization settled in my stomach. This was not random identity theft. This was calculated fraud, committed by the people who were supposed to love and protect me. I remembered helping my parents with their taxes the previous year, leaving copies of my own returns with them for reference on certain deductions. They had access to my social security number, date of birth, and employment details. They had photographs of my license from when they helped me move into my condo. They had over years collected the pieces of my identity, like magpies gathering shiny objects waiting for the right moment to use them. The timing aligned perfectly with rumors of James's business troubles that my cousin had mentioned in passing at Christmas. It explained my sister's miraculous ability to keep their dream home, despite what must have been imminent foreclosure. It clarified my parents' increasing questions about my financial situation. They were assessing whether I could absorb this massive fraud without detecting it, or had the resources to fight back if I did. My hands shook as I calculated the potential damage. Beyond the immediate impact on my credit score, this mortgage represented a debt nearly 4 times my annual salary. If forced to pay, I would lose my own home and spend decades recovering financially. My carefully built life would collapse like a house of cards. The physical symptoms of shock set in: a cold sweat, nausea, the sensation of the floor tilting beneath me. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, and then phoned my closest friend Michael. They did what Michael's voice rose in disbelief as I explained the situation. That is not just unethical, it is criminal. Identity theft and fraud do not become okay because the perpetrators are family. He came over immediately, bringing food I could not eat, and sitting with me as I called a lawyer friend, Rebecca, who specialized in financial crimes. She listened carefully to my explanation, occasionally asking clarifying questions about the documents. "Andrew, I need to be very clear with you," she said finally. "This is a serious case of fraud with significant legal implications. The fact that your family members are involved does not diminish the crime. If anything, it constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty and trust that courts take very seriously." She outlined my options: report the fraud to law enforcement and the mortgage company, potentially leading to criminal charges against my parents and sister. Try to negotiate with the mortgage company while pursuing civil action against my family, or accept the debt to protect my family from legal consequences. Take 24 hours to think about it, Rebecca advised. But whatever you decide, do not discuss this with your parents or sister without legal representation. And do not under any circumstances make any payments on this mortgage. That could be construed as accepting the debt as legitimate. After Michael left, I spent hours researching identity theft involving family members, reading horror stories of relationships destroyed and lives derailed. Around midnight, I made my decision. Before confronting my family, I needed to understand exactly what had happened and why. I needed to look them in the eyes when they explained how they could betray me so completely. The next morning, I called my office and requested 2 personal days, something I had accumulated plenty of over years, of rarely missing work. I gathered all the mortgage documents, credit reports, and notes from my conversation with Rebecca, organizing them in a portfolio with color-coded tabs. The methodical process helped calm my racing thoughts. Before driving to my parents' house, I called Rebecca again for final advice. "Remember, stay calm and factual," she counseled. "Record the conversation if your state allows one-party consent recordings. Do not make threats, but be clear about the seriousness of the situation. And Andrew, prepare yourself for them to deny everything initially. People rarely admit to fraud immediately, even when confronted with evidence." The drive to my childhood home took 45 minutes each mile, increasing the heaviness in my chest. I rehearsed what I would say, trying to find words that could possibly address such a profound betrayal. Nothing seemed adequate. I noticed their driveway held a new luxury SUV I had not seen before, replacing the sensible sedan they had driven for years. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place: their sudden ability to upgrade vehicles, despite claiming financial constraints whenever I mentioned my student loan struggles. Neither of my parents were expecting me. Dad opened the door with genuine surprise that quickly shifted to unease when he saw my expression. "Andrew, this is unexpected. Everything okay, son?" He gestured me inside, calling out to Mom that I had stopped by. Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. What a lovely surprise, I was just making lunch. Are you hungry? The normalcy of their greeting, as if they had not committed a life-altering crime against me, was surreal. I declined food and followed them to the living room, where family photos lined the walls. Most featured Cassandra, at various performances, and life milestones. I appeared mainly in group shots. We sat, and I placed my portfolio on the coffee table between us. I received some concerning mail recently. I began keeping my voice steady. A mortgage company is claiming I took out a loan for a property in Oak Brook Estates, a $463,000 loan. I watched their reactions carefully. Dad's eyes darted to Mom, a quick flash of alarm before his expression settled into concerned confusion. Mom's hand moved to her throat, a nervous tell she had displayed since I was a child. That sounds like identity theft, Dad said with manufactured conviction. You should report it right away. I considered that, I replied, opening the portfolio. But then I noticed some interesting details. I laid out the documents one by one. The loan application with my forged signature, the property address matching Cassandra's home, the contact information variations. The most curious thing, I continued, as they sat in thickening silence, is that whoever did this had access to my tax returns. The exact copies I left here last year, when I helped with your taxes. They also knew my mother's maiden name, my first pet's name, and the street I grew up on, all common security questions. Mom's eyes had filled with tears, but Dad maintained his facade. I do not understand what you are implying, Andrew. I am not implying anything. I am stating facts. You and Mom took out a mortgage in my name to save Cassandra and James from foreclosure on a house they could not afford. You forged my signature, stole my identity, and potentially ruined my financial future. And you have been making payments on this fraudulent loan for 5 months, until recently, when you apparently stopped. Mom broke first, her facade crumbling. We were going to tell you. It was just temporary, until James's business deal came through. Dad shot her a warning look, but the dam had broken. Cassandra and James were going to lose everything. Mom continued, tears streaming now. The bank was foreclosing. They had nowhere to go. We had already co-signed for other loans and could not qualify for more credit. So you decided to steal mine. I said the words like stones. Dad leaned forward, shifting from denial to justification in an instant. It was not stealing. It was a family emergency. We were protecting your sister. By committing fraud against me? By doing what was necessary, he countered, voice hardening. Cassandra and the kids would have been homeless. James was under tremendous stress. Their marriage was at risk. And what about my home? My future? Did those factor into your decision at all? Mom reached for my hand, which I pulled back. Andrew, we always knew you would land on your feet. You are so responsible. Cassandra needs more support, she always has. So you committed a federal crime. We were going to make the payments, Dad insisted. It was only meant to be in your name temporarily until we could refinance. Then James had another setback, and we had to help with their car payments too. Things got tight. The conversation spiraled as their justifications grew more desperate, and my disbelief deepened. They had planned to make payments, but stopped when their own finances became strained. They had intended to confess eventually, but feared my reaction. They had borrowed my identity as a last resort to save my sister. Then came the statement that would echo in my mind for months afterward. Dad, frustrated by my unwillingness to accept their explanations, stood up and pointed an accusatory finger at me. Your sister deserved this house. You should be honored to help. After everything we have done for you, the least you could do is support your family in a crisis. The audacity left me speechless. Everything they had done for me, I had paid my own way since high school, while they emptied their retirement accounts for Cassandra's every whim. What exactly have you done for me? I finally asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Name one financial sacrifice you made for my benefit that equals what you are asking me to accept now. They exchanged glances but offered no examples. The confrontation escalated when Dad called Cassandra, putting her on speakerphone. Andrew is here making wild accusations about the house situation. You need to come over. Within 20 minutes, Cassandra arrived with James in tow. Her initial performance of shock and confusion quickly dissolved when I presented the evidence. "We were desperate," she admitted, glancing at James, who stood stiffly by the fireplace. "The bank was going to take our home in 14 days. Mom and Dad suggested this as a temporary solution." "Temporary," I echoed. "This is a 30-year mortgage." "We were going to refinance as soon as my business deal closed," James interjected. "It was just taking longer than expected." "The mortgage is 6 months old, and payments have already stopped," I pointed out. "When exactly was this magical refinancing supposed to happen?" The room grew quiet. Then Cassandra began to cry those same tears that had won her everything from extra dessert to a car on her 16th birthday. "What do you want us to do? Live on the street? Have my children sleep in a shelter?" "I want you to not commit fraud against your own brother," I replied. "I want you to live within your means instead of buying a $500,000 house you cannot afford. I want parents who do not see me as a financial resource to be exploited for their favorite child." James stepped forward, his designer watch catching the light. "Look, we can work something out. Maybe you could just keep making the payments for another year until my development project pays out. We will pay you back everything with interest." The absurdity of his suggestion that I should knowingly take on their massive debt while they continued living in luxury was the final straw. "This is not a negotiation," I said, standing and gathering my documents. "This is me informing you that I know what you did. You have 3 options. 1. Transfer the mortgage legitimately to your names immediately. 2. Sell the house and pay off the fraudulent loan. Or 3. I report this to the police and mortgage fraud division tomorrow." The room exploded in protests and accusations. I was heartless, selfish, vindictive, did not understand family loyalty, would destroy our parents' retirement, would ruin Cassandra's children's stability. As I walked toward the door, Dad delivered his parting shot. "If you do this, you are not part of this family anymore." I paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at the 4 of them, the people who should have loved me most in the world now united against me because I refused to be their financial scapegoat. "You made that decision 6 months ago when you stole my identity," I replied and walked out. Driving away from my parents' house, I pulled over after a few blocks, hands shaking too badly to continue. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my family, which I ignored. Instead, I called Michael, who had offered to let me stay with him if needed. "I am coming over," I said when he answered. "It is worse than we thought." At Michael's apartment, I recounted the confrontation while he fixed us both strong drinks. As I described my family's reactions, the full weight of their betrayal settled on me. This was not a one-time desperate act. The evidence pointed to a calculated, ongoing scheme. They were never going to tell me, I realized aloud. The plan was for me to never find out. They only stopped making payments when they ran short on funds themselves. "What did your sister say?" Michael asked. "Was she at least remorseful?" Before I could answer, my phone rang again. Cassandra. Against Michael's advice, I answered and put it on speaker. "Andrew, you need to calm down and think rationally." She began without preamble. "You are blowing this way out of proportion." Blowing out of proportion the nearly $500,000 fraud committed against me. "It is not fraud when it is family helping family," she insisted. "Mom and Dad explained their plan. It was only supposed to be temporary." "Did you know about this? From the beginning? Did you know they were using my identity to secure your mortgage?" Her hesitation told me everything. "We were in a desperate situation, Andrew. The bank gave us no choice. The bank did not force you to buy a house you could not afford. The bank did not suggest stealing my identity. Those were your choices. James had assurances his development deal was solid. It is not our fault the investors pulled out at the last minute." As our conversation continued, the depth of the conspiracy unfolded. Not only had Cassandra known about the fraudulent mortgage from the start, but she and James had actively participated in planning it. They had provided my parents with documents needed for the application. James had coached our father on how to forge my signature convincingly. Most disturbingly, they had deliberately missed recent payments, knowing the delinquency notices would eventually reach me. "We figured, once you found out, you would just handle it," Cassandra admitted. You always fix everything. That is what you do. Her casual expectation that I would simply accept this massive fraud left me speechless. Then she delivered another shock. Besides, this isn't the first time we have borrowed your credit. What are you talking about? Remember last year, when Mom and Dad helped you organize your tax documents? They found your old credit card statements. There were several cards you had opened for the sign-up bonuses, but rarely used. We just borrowed them for a few expenses when things got tight. My blood ran cold. You stole my credit cards. Not stole, borrowed. We made the minimum payments. Well, until recently. A quick search on my phone confirmed multiple credit cards, showed high balances and recent missed payments. Small amounts compared to the mortgage, but still thousands of dollars of unauthorized debt in my name. After ending the call with Cassandra, I sat in stunned silence. Michael poured me another drink. There is more, I finally said. They have been using my credit cards too. This was not a one-time act of desperation. This was systematic financial abuse. The next revelation came from an unexpected source. While scanning through my email for any other financial irregularities, I discovered password reset notifications for accounts I had not accessed. Someone had been attempting to access my retirement accounts and investment portfolio. They were going to drain everything I realized, showing Michael the emails. Credit cards, mortgage, and now retirement savings. There would have been nothing left. Later that evening, James called. To my surprise, his tone was different from the united front he had presented earlier. Look, Andrew, I want to level with you, he began, sounding tired. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. Cassandra and your parents thought you would just accept this as a family obligation. I told them it was a bad idea from the start. Yet you went along with it. I did, and that is on me. But you should know, they are planning more. Your dad mentioned something about your investment accounts, having enough to solve everyone's problems. I do not think they are going to stop. His warning, self-serving, as it might be confirmed, my worst fears. My family viewed my financial stability not as my hard-earned achievement, but as a resource they were entitled to exploit. James continued, Cassandra is telling everyone, you are abandoning the family in a crisis. Your cousins, your aunts, and uncles, they are all getting calls about how you refuse to help your sister keep her home for her children. The coordinated emotional manipulation campaign was the final confirmation that this betrayal went beyond a single bad decision. This was who my family truly was, people who would steal from me, then villainize me for not allowing it to continue. Before ending the call, James offered one last piece of information. They have a folder with all your personal information. Passwords, account numbers, copies of your ID. They call it the Andrew file. It is in your dad's home office bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. That night, I took decisive action. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I changed every password for every financial account. I called my bank and brokerage to add verbal passwords required for any transactions. I documented everything I had learned, recording conversations, where legal, and taking screenshots of unauthorized accounts. As I worked through these protective measures, texts arrived from extended family members. How could you do this to your sister? Family comes first. Your parents gave you everything, and this is how you repay them. The narrative had been established. I was the villain for refusing to sacrifice my financial future on the altar of family obligation. The next morning I met again with Rebecca, the lawyer. After reviewing the expanded evidence, including the credit card theft and attempted access to retirement accounts, her assessment was blunt. This is not a one-time mistake. This is a pattern of criminal behavior targeting you specifically. The mortgage fraud alone could result in federal charges carrying significant penalties. Add the credit card fraud and attempted access to retirement accounts, and we are looking at multiple felonies. When I hesitated at the word felonies, she leaned forward. Andrew, I understand these are your family members, but ask yourself, if they are willing to destroy your financial future without remorse, what else might they do when truly cornered? The following weeks were some of the most difficult of my life. The mortgage company began formal collection proceedings, sending increasingly threatening letters about legal action. My credit score continued to plummet as more missed payments were reported. My phone constantly lit up with messages from family members alternating between guilt trips and outright hostility. At work, my performance suffered. I found myself staring at spreadsheets, unable to focus my mind, replaying the confrontation with my family. My boss noticed calling me in for a concern-filled conversation about my sudden distraction. I provided a vague explanation about family issues without details. "Take the time you need to sort this out," he advised. "But remember, your career is at a critical point. This year's performance reviews determine promotions." The financial implications grew clearer and more dire. If forced to assume this fraudulent debt, I would lose my condo. My retirement savings would be depleted. My carefully constructed financial security would vanish. Even if I somehow managed to make the payments, the damage to my credit would take years to repair, affecting everything from future housing to job prospects, as many employers in financial fields conducted credit checks. Meanwhile, the emotional toll mounted. I lost sleep, lost weight, and found myself jumping whenever my phone rang. Friends tried to help, but how could they understand the magnitude of this betrayal? The people who should have protected me had instead targeted me for financial exploitation, then cast me as the villain for refusing to comply. I found myself facing three distinct options, each with devastating consequences. Option 1. Accept the debt to preserve family relationships. Pay the mortgage, clean up the credit card mess, and accept that my financial future would be sacrificed for my sister's extravagant lifestyle. This would mean working second jobs, selling my condo, and abandoning my own goals, but would avoid a family schism and potential legal consequences for my parents and sister. Option 2. Report the crimes fully. File police reports, cooperate with fraud investigations, and let the legal system address the multiple felonies committed. This would protect my financial future, but would likely result in criminal charges against my parents and sister, potentially including jail time. Option 3. Pursue a middle path. Work with the mortgage company and credit card issuers to prove fraud without necessarily pressing criminal charges, while severing financial ties with my family completely. This might mitigate some financial damage while avoiding the most severe legal consequences for my family. I made spreadsheets analyzing the financial impact of each option, calculated timelines for recovery, and tried to quantify the unquantifiable, the emotional cost of each path. As I deliberated, the pressure intensified. Cassandra began using her children as emotional leverage, sending photos of my niece and nephew with messages like, "They might not have a home next month because Uncle Andrew is angry about paperwork." My mother left tearful voicemails describing how my father's health was suffering from the stress. "He could barely get out of bed this morning thinking about how his son has turned against us." Is that what you want? For this to kill your father? Colleagues noticed my distraction. Deadlines approached for important client work. The mortgage company escalated to their legal department. Each day without a decision increased the potential consequences. One night, unable to sleep at 3 a.m, I found myself reviewing family photos from my childhood. I noticed a pattern I had overlooked before. In nearly every image, Cassandra was centered, highlighted, celebrated. I appeared at the edges, often partially cropped out, an afterthought in the family narrative. It was a visual representation of a truth I had always known but never fully acknowledged in my family's story. I was never the protagonist. I called Dr. Reeves, a therapist friend had recommended, and scheduled an emergency session. In his office, I laid out the entire situation from my childhood to the current crisis. "What keeps you from making this decision?" he asked, after listening intently. "You seem to know what the right course of action is." "They are my family," I said, the inadequate explanation catching in my throat. "Are they?" he asked gently. "In what ways have they acted as family should?" That question lingered as I left his office. What defines family? Is it blood relation alone? Or is it mutual support, respect, and care? By any definition beyond genetics, had these people truly been family to me? That evening, my cousin Ryan called. Unlike the others, his message was different. "I heard what happened from your mom, but something did not add up," he said. "I wanted to hear your side." I explained the situation factually, without emotional coloring. When I finished, Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "I am not surprised," he finally said. "They did something similar to your grandfather before he died. Not this scale, but the same pattern using his resources, manipulating him with guilt when he objected. It destroyed his last years. This revelation that my parents had a history of financial exploitation beyond what they had done to me was the clarity I needed. This was not an isolated, desperate act, but a pattern of behavior that would continue if not stopped. That night I made my decision. I would protect myself, fully report the fraud to all relevant authorities, and let the consequences fall where they may. My family had made their choices. Now I would make mine. The next morning, I met with Rebecca to implement a comprehensive plan. We began with formal fraud reports to the mortgage company, providing notarized affidavits confirming I had never applied for nor authorized the loan. Similar reports went to the credit card companies where unauthorized accounts had been opened or existing accounts misused. The key is consistency and documentation, Rebecca advised, as we worked through the stack of forms. We need to establish a clear timeline of discovery and immediate action on your part. We filed a police report detailing the identity theft and fraud, providing copies of all evidence. The officer taking the report looked uncomfortable when I explained the perpetrators were my parents and sister. Family fraud cases are always the hardest, he acknowledged. But unfortunately, they are increasingly common. People assume family members will not press charges, which makes relatives frequent targets. With the police report in hand, we sent formal notifications to all 3 credit bureaus, requesting extended fraud alerts and complete removal of the fraudulent accounts from my credit history. I enrolled in advanced identity protection services and placed security freezes that would prevent any new accounts from being opened without my explicit verification. The most difficult step was the formal cease and desist letter Rebecca prepared for my family, explicitly prohibiting them from using my personal information, attempting to access my accounts, or representing themselves as me in any capacity. The letter outlined the evidence we had collected and the reports already filed, making it clear that any further attempts at financial fraud would result in immediate criminal charges. This establishes the legal boundary, Rebecca explained as I signed the document. If they cross it now, their actions move from family matter to deliberate criminal conduct after explicit warning. As we implemented these protections, the backlash from my family intensified. My parents enlisted family, friends, and distant relatives in their campaign, resulting in a barrage of messages ranging from concerned to hostile. "Your mother can barely eat from crying," wrote my aunt. "How could you involve the police against your own parents?" "We raised you better than this," texted my father. "When you realize what a mistake you have made, do not expect forgiveness to come easily." Cassandra's approach was more direct. "If Mom and Dad go to jail for this, I will make sure your niece and nephew know exactly who tore their family apart. They will grow up knowing you chose money over family." The emotional manipulation was relentless, but with each attempt I became more certain of my decision. These were not the actions of people who loved me, but of people desperate to escape consequences. The professional toll continued to mount. I had to take time off for meetings with fraud investigators, credit agencies, and legal consultations. My boss called me in again, his concern now mixed with frustration. "Whatever is happening in your personal life is affecting your work," he noted. "Several clients have mentioned delays and errors in their files." I made the difficult decision to disclose a limited version of the situation to him, explaining that I was the victim of significant identity theft that required my attention to resolve. Without naming my family as the perpetrators, I provided documentation of the ongoing legal process and estimated timeline for resolution. His response surprised me. "My brother-in-law went through something similar last year. Take the time you need to handle this properly. We can redistribute some of your workload temporarily." This small act of understanding from my boss, a person with no obligation to support me through this crisis, stood in stark contrast to my family's behavior. 3 weeks into the process, we received the first significant breakthrough. The mortgage company's fraud department concluded their initial investigation and found clear evidence of application fraud. They issued a preliminary determination removing me from the loan obligation while they pursued the actual recipients of the funds. "This is just the first step," Rebecca cautioned. "They will now go after your parents and sister as the actual beneficiaries. That process could get ugly." She was right. Within days, Cassandra and James received formal notification that the mortgage company was initiating foreclosure proceedings based on fraudulent application. My parents received notice that they were under investigation for mortgage fraud with potential referral to federal prosecutors. The situation reached a turning point when I received an unexpected call from James. "They are going to take the house," he said, without greeting. "The mortgage company has given us 30 days to vacate or face formal eviction." "I am sorry for your children," I replied, meaning it. "But those are the consequences of actions you all participated in. Look, I know we messed up, but Cassandra is falling apart. Your parents are talking about bankruptcy. Isn't there something you can do to help us fix this without losing everything? Why would I help the people who conspired to destroy my financial future and then vilified me for protecting myself?" His response was surprisingly honest. "Because despite everything, you are the only one in this family who actually honors their commitments. We all know that. That is why everyone thought you would just accept this debt because you always do the right thing even when no one else does." The irony was bitter. They had targeted me precisely because of the character traits they now appealed to. For mercy, my reliability, my sense of responsibility, my concern for others. "I will not interfere with the legal process," I told him. "The mortgage company and credit card issuers will pursue what they are legally entitled to recover. I will not make their situation worse, but I will not bail them out either." As the legal processes advanced, my parents faced the most serious consequences. The evidence of their deliberate fraud was overwhelming, including the discovery of the Andrew file James had mentioned, containing all my personal information, organized specifically for identity theft purposes. Emails between them discussed the scheme in explicit detail, including acknowledgement that what they were doing was illegal. The district attorney offered them a plea deal, probation, restitution, and community service instead of jail time, given their age and lack of prior criminal record. The condition was full admission of guilt and cooperation in recovering the fraudulently obtained funds. My father initially refused, maintaining they had done nothing wrong. My mother, however, seeing the reality of their situation, accepted the deal and provided a full confession detailing how they had planned and executed the fraud over months. Her statement, which Rebecca obtained through legal channels, revealed the extent of their calculation. We knew Andrew would not agree to co-sign for Cassandra again after the car loan incident, she admitted. So Harold suggested we use Andrew's information without telling him. We thought we could make the payments until James's business improved, and Andrew would never need to know. This confirmation that the fraud had been premeditated, rather than a desperate last-minute decision, solidified my resolve. These were not actions taken in momentary panic, but a calculated scheme to exploit my good credit while expecting to escape consequences. The court date for my parents was set for the following month. Cassandra and James, facing financial ruin, filed for bankruptcy to try to protect some assets from creditors. Their dream house was scheduled for auction, and they moved to a rental apartment half the size. Throughout this process, I maintained strict no contact with my family except through legal channels. The emotional distance helped me see with increasing clarity how unhealthy our relationship had always been. With each legal filing and fraud investigation report, I felt not just anger, but a strange sense of liberation, as if I was finally breaking free from a lifetime of exploitation disguised as family dynamics. Then came an unexpected development. My mother reached out through Rebecca, asking to meet without my father's knowledge. Against my better judgment and Rebecca's advice, I agreed to a brief meeting at a neutral location with Rebecca present. My mother looked smaller somehow, her confident demeanor replaced by genuine contrition. "I know you probably will never forgive us," she began, "and I do not blame you. What we did was unforgivable." She explained that my father remained convinced they had done nothing wrong, that family obligation trumped legal boundaries. But in the face of potential jail time and financial ruin, she had begun to question everything about their family values and decisions. "We always favored Cassandra," she admitted. "We told ourselves it was because she needed more help, but the truth is, we just found her easier to love. She was like us, expressive, social, wanting the appearances of success. You were always so self-sufficient. We took advantage of that." Her honesty, coming far too late, offered no real comfort. but it did provide something I had never expected: validation of my lifetime, of feeling like an outsider in my own family. "I cannot undo what we did," she said as our meeting ended. "But I wanted you to know that at least one of us understands how wrong it was. Not just legally wrong, but wrong as parents, wrong as people who were supposed to love you." The legal proceedings concluded with outcomes that seemed both just and merciful. My parents received 5 years probation, significant community service hours, and restitution orders they would likely spend the rest of their lives paying. My credit was fully restored after months of diligent work with the credit bureaus and financial institutions. The fraudulent mortgage was removed from my records, and all unauthorized credit card charges were reversed. The financial recovery was straightforward compared to the emotional aftermath. I maintained strict no contact with my father and sister, who continued to view me as the villain in their financial downfall. My mother sent occasional messages through approved channels, which I acknowledged, but did not engage with beyond basic civility. In the months following the resolution, I focused on rebuilding my sense of security. I installed comprehensive security systems in my condo. I established relationships with new financial advisors who had no connection to my family. I changed my phone number and email addresses, sharing the new contact information only with trusted friends. More importantly, I worked on rebuilding my inner security. Weekly sessions with Dr. Reeves helped me process not just the recent betrayal, but the lifetime of family dynamics that had led to it. I learned to recognize and counter the guilt programming that had made me vulnerable to exploitation. I practiced setting boundaries in all relationships, a skill my family had actively discouraged. The hardest part of healing from family betrayal, Dr. Reeves explained during one session, is grieving the family you thought you had, while accepting the family you actually have. That grieving process took unexpected forms. I found myself mourning not just the recent loss of family connections, but the recognition that what I had perceived as family love had always been conditional. I grieved for the child who had worked so hard for approval that would never come for the young adult who had interpreted neglect as encouragement toward independence. About a year after the legal resolution, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee. We sat at an outdoor cafe on a mild spring day. Two people connected by blood, but separated by choices neither could undo. "Your father still believes we did nothing wrong," she told me. "He will never apologize." "I know," I replied. "I do not expect him to." Cassandra named her new baby after him last month. A boy, Harold James. The information was delivered without malice, just a fact about a family I was no longer part of. I felt a surprising lack of reaction, neither pain, nor envy, nor regret. Just acknowledgement of a reality that no longer defined my life. "I am doing well," I offered when she asked. "The promotion came through. I am seeing someone new, taking it slowly, but it feels healthy." We parted with an awkward half-hug, both knowing this careful civility was the most our relationship could now achieve. It was not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that continuing to carry anger would only burden me, not those who had wronged me. The experience transformed how I approached all relationships. I became more attuned to early warning signs of boundary violations. I learned to distinguish between healthy interdependence and exploitative dynamics. I practiced saying no without justification, and yes without self-sacrifice. My circle of friends evolved. Some disappeared when the drama of family crisis faded. Others proved their loyalty through consistent presence. I discovered family is not defined by DNA, but by mutual respect and care, a revelation both liberating and bittersweet. Professionally, I channeled my experience into helping others. I began volunteering at a financial literacy program, teaching young adults how to protect themselves from identity theft and financial exploitation. Without sharing the specifics of my story, I used my hard-won knowledge to help others avoid similar pain. At work, my renewed focus and determination led to another promotion. I found myself mentoring younger colleagues, particularly on establishing healthy work-life boundaries. "Your value is not measured by how much you sacrifice," I would tell them, wisdom earned through difficult experience. 2 years after the mortgage discovery, I received an invitation to my niece's birthday party, a peace offering of sorts from Cassandra. After careful consideration and discussion with Dr. Reeves, I declined, politely sending a gift but maintaining the boundaries that now protected my well-being. Some family members understood my decision. Others used it as further evidence of my unforgiving nature. The difference was that their opinions no longer defined my worth. I had learned to be the author of my own story rather than a supporting character in someone else's. The most profound change was internal. I stopped seeking approval from those who had proven incapable of providing it. I recognized that my self-sufficiency, once exploited by my family, was actually my greatest strength. I learned that forgiveness does not require reconciliation or vulnerability to further harm. Most importantly, I discovered that family patterns can be identified, understood, and broken. The legacy of financial exploitation that had apparently run through generations of my family, from my grandfather to my parents to their attempted use of me, stopped with my refusal to participate. That boundary, painful as it was to establish, represented not just self-protection, but a transformation of family legacy. If you are watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Financial abuse from family members is still abuse, regardless of blood ties or emotional manipulation. Your boundaries deserve respect. Your financial security matters. Your future is not a resource for others to exploit. Family should uplift you, not use you. Love should free you, not indebt you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for those who would exploit you, is to say no. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members over financial issues? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more content about navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve financial respect even from family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true family nurtures your growth, not your guilt.